The Bible is often called the good book. But let's be real, it's also a massive book. While many of us know the famous stories of faith, miracles, and redemption, there's a darker side that often gets overlooked. Beyond the well-known accounts of Jesus' death and resurrection, the Bible is filled with some of the most shocking, gruesome, and dramatic deaths you'll ever read. From kings meeting their brutal downfall, to villains getting their ultimate karma. These stories are straight out of an ancient thriller. So buckle up, because we're counting down 10 of the most jaw-dropping biblical deaths you probably haven't heard about. And, hey, if you love fascinating little-known Bible stories, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, so you don't miss out on more deep dives into history's most epic tales. Number 10. King Agrippa. The Herod family does not have a great reputation in the Bible, and for good reason. Herod the Great is infamous for ordering the massacre of infants in a desperate attempt to kill baby Jesus. But the apple didn't fall far from the tree. His grandson, Herod Agrippa, took up the family tradition of tyranny, targeting Jesus' followers with ruthless violence. According to the book of Acts, Agrippa had James, the brother of John, executed by the sword, a move that won him public approval. Encouraged by this, he arrested Peter too, intending to make an example of him. But Peter miraculously escaped, and Agrippa's fate was sealed. Not long after, Agrippa took the stage before a massive crowd, dressed in dazzling, extravagant robes. His speech was so powerful that people cried out, "This is not the voice of a man. It is the voice of a god." And that's when things took a terrifying turn. The Bible tells us that at that very moment, an angel of the Lord struck him down for his arrogance. The punishment? He was eaten alive by worms. Even the historian Josephus records that Agrippa died in horrific pain, clutching his stomach. Whether the worms were literal or symbolic, one thing is clear. His gruesome end cemented his place in history as yet another tyrant who flew too close to the sun. No doubt, it tells us about instant karma. Number 9. King Eglon's guts. When the ancient Israelites angered God by doing evil in his eyes, things had a way of turning messy, very messy. As punishment for their disobedience, God allowed a ruthless foreign king named Eglon to rise to power. Eglon wasn't just any king. He was a brutal oppressor who united local tribes, conquered Jericho, and ruled over the Israelites with an iron fist for 18 long years. But the Israelites weren't about to take this lying down. Desperate for deliverance, they cried out to God for help. And help came in the form of an unexpected hero, a man named Ehud. Ehud was tasked with bringing Eglon the annual tribute, a payment the Israelites were forced to make. But this time, Ehud wasn't just bringing gold. He had something extra up his sleeve, literally. After handing over the tribute, Ehud requested a private audience with the king, claiming he had a special message from God. And oh, did he ever. As Eglon, a man described as very fat, rose from his throne, Ehud whipped out a hidden sword and drove it straight into the king's gut, so deep that his fat swallowed the blade whole. The force of the blow was so intense that Eglon's bowels emptied on the spot. And here's where it gets almost comical. Eglon's servants, assuming he was just taking his time in the bathroom, left him undisturbed for hours. Meanwhile, Ehud slipped away undetected, setting the stage for a full-blown Israelite uprising. By the time the guards finally checked on their king, he was long dead, and Ehud was long gone. Number 8. The Concubine. The story of the Levite's concubine in the book of Judges is a particularly sad one. Although it deals with the death of a woman, simply referred to as a concubine, she does not speak at all in the narrative. This concubine belonged to a Levite, but returned to her family, apparently after being unfaithful to her husband. The Levite came looking for her and was welcomed into her family home, but he wanted to return to his house with his concubine. On the journey back, they were offered hospitality by another person, but while they were enjoying themselves, some of the wicked men of the city surrounded the house. Pounding on the door, they shouted to the old man who owned the house, "Bring out the man who came to your house so we can have sex with him." Their host tried to dissuade the wicked men by offering them his virgin daughter and the concubine instead. But they still wanted the Levite. The Levite pushed his concubine out of the house, where she was attacked and raped throughout the night. In the morning, she crawled back to the house and collapsed on the threshold. Her husband picked her up and took her home. There, he cut her up into 12 parts and sent her mangled corpse to the 12 tribes of Israel, raising an army to seek vengeance on the wicked men who did this deed. The rape, that is, not the offering up your wife to a mob. Number 7. Elisha's bears. No one likes being mocked by a group of children. Even those with the patience of a saint can be sorely tested by kids being naughty. The prophet Elisha maybe went a bit too far when he punished a particularly unruly group. In 2 Kings, as Elisha was walking along one day, a group of lads came out from the city to shout names at him, something along the lines of, "Oi, Baldy." People can be rather sensitive about a receding hairline, and so Elisha cursed the boys in the name of the Lord. Immediately, 2 she-bears appeared and tore 42 children to shreds. This no doubt taught them a valuable lesson in their final, agony-filled moments. Even the faithful can find passages like this in the Bible hard to explain. One literalist website quibbles over whether the Hebrew text really says they were little children who were brutally killed, as if 42 teenagers being mauled by bears is better. In the end, though, they settle for the idea that it was all worth it, because anyone who saw the slaughter would have respected Elisha just that little bit more. Number 6. Jael's tent peg. Deborah was one of the judges of the Israelites and one of the great strong women of the Bible. Although she was a great spiritual leader, she relied on men to lead the armies. While facing Sisera, leader of the Canaanites, she called on Barak to fight for her. He agreed only on the condition that Deborah would go with him. For his insolent reply, Deborah foretold that he would have no glory in the defeat of Sisera, for the conquest would now be given into the hands of a woman. And that woman was Jael. The Lord was on the Israelites' side, and in the battle, Sisera's forces were scattered. The Canaanite fled back to his camp and hid in Jael's tent. Jael offered Sisera food, drink, and a soft bed. As soon as Sisera fell asleep, Jael picked up a tent peg and hammered it straight through his temple and into the ground below. Sisera never woke up. Despite being an act of treachery, not to mention bad hosting, on Jael's part, the murder of Sisera is generally counted as a good thing by many people who read the Bible. Number 5. Absalom's hair. Absalom is one of the bad boys of the Bible. Attractive, naughty, and rebellious, he is a great, if flawed, character. The son of King David, Absalom was a favorite of both the people and his father, and should have been set for an easy life. When his sister Tamar was raped by their half-brother Amnon, however, Absalom set out for revenge. He invited all of King David's sons to a feast. He got Amnon drunk and had his men murder Amnon. After this, King David was a bit displeased with his son. Absalom fled, though he managed to regain his father's trust and love. When people began to grumble about David's judicial rulings, Absalom started to suggest that he would do a better job if he were their king. With his new supporters, Absalom declared himself king. David had to ride out to do battle with his son. At the Battle of Ephraim's Wood, Absalom's army was completely defeated. The would-be usurper was forced to flee on a mule through the woods. Absalom's fashionably long hair was his downfall, however. when it caught in the branches of a tree and left him hanging between heaven and earth. There he was found, and despite David's command not to hurt his son, Absalom was speared 3 times through the heart. Number 4. Abimelech. All families have their little squabbles, but the sons of King Gideon could really have used some family counseling. When Gideon died, his son Abimelech decided that he would have to act fast if he wanted to get ahead. Going to his mother's family, he borrowed enough money to hire a group of rogues and went to his father's palace and murdered his 70 brothers. Only his brother Jotham escaped the bloodbath. He cursed Abimelech and all who followed him. Abimelech was not an ideal king, as he tended to be brutal and made war against his own people. He once burned 1,000 civilians, including women and children, to death in a fort to kill the rebels inside with them. When he besieged the city of Thebes, however, the women would not let Abimelech immolate them. The king had fought his way toward a high tower where most of the people were hiding after having climbed to its roof. As Abimelech prepared to set the tower on fire, one of the women above dropped a millstone on him, shattering his skull. The wounded king turned to one of his own men and gave this order: "Draw your sword and kill me, so that they can't say, 'A woman killed him.'" And so Abimelech died with his male ego intact. Number 3. Plague of snakes. When people think of biblical plagues, they usually picture the 10 horrors unleashed on Egypt. But that was just the beginning. The Bible is full of plagues, and one of the most terrifying? A deadly swarm of venomous snakes. After escaping Egypt, the Israelites quickly went from grateful to grumbling. They complained to Moses, "Why did you bring us here? There's no bread, no water, and this food is disgusting." God was not amused. His response? A flood of deadly serpents, slithering into their camp, biting and killing many. Panicked, the people begged Moses for help, and he prayed for mercy. God's solution was strange but effective. Make a bronze snake and put it on a pole. Anyone who looks at it will live. Moses did as instructed, and sure enough, those who looked at the bronze serpent survived. But for those already bitten, too little, too late. A chilling reminder: be careful what you complain about. You never know what might come crawling your way. Number 2, falling after being asleep in a sermon. Even the best preacher can sometimes lose his audience, and the Apostle Paul was no exception. One man was literally bored to death by St. Paul. One day, St. Paul came to speak to the Christians of Macedon and Greece, and so had a meal with them. As often happens at dinner parties, conversation got carried away. We are told that St. Paul spoke until midnight, with servants having to bring out many lamps. Listening to the talk was a young man called Eutychus, who had seated himself on a window ledge. Perhaps inevitably, he began to close his eyes and finally fell asleep, before promptly falling out the window and dying on the ground 3 stories below. St. Paul rushed out and told everyone not to panic, before declaring that Eutychus was in fact alive. And miraculously, he was. No one wants to lose their audience in that way. Number 1. Lot's wife. Sodom wasn't just bad, it was infamously wicked. So wicked, in fact, that even God himself had enough and decided it was time for the city to be wiped off the map. He sent 2 angels to find just 10 good people. If they existed, the city would be spared. The angels met Lot, who took them in. But soon, a violent mob gathered outside, demanding the visitors be handed over. In a disturbing twist, Lot offered his own daughters instead. But the mob refused. The angels intervened, blinding the attackers and ordering Lot to flee. Sodom's destruction was imminent. And sure enough, as Lot and his family ran for their lives, God unleashed fire and burning sulfur, reducing Sodom to nothing but smoke and ash. But there was one rule: don't look back. And then came Mrs. Lot's fatal mistake. Whether it was curiosity, regret, or sheer disbelief, she couldn't resist turning her head for one last glance at the city she was leaving behind. And in that very instant, she was turned into a pillar of salt. A chilling lesson is that sometimes looking back can cost you everything. Well, the Bible isn't just a book of faith, it's a book of fate, where arrogance, betrayal, and defiance often lead to brutal and bizarre ends. From kings eaten by worms to sinners consumed by fire, these dreadful deaths serve as chilling reminders of divine justice, human folly, and the thin line between mercy and judgment. What do you think? Which of these deaths shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more dark and fascinating biblical tales.